And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Coleman. Joining me right now is Emilio Danello. And along with Emilio, we have Rob Wilson and Gordon Davis. They are our Fulham legends. This should be a fun show, and I look forward to doing it with you guys. It's been a long time since we talked. I'm going to go around the room. First, I'll go to you, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Looking forward to this evening. Now the season's over. I'm sure we'll all have different views and different opinions, but yeah, looking forward to the show.
Okay, so am I. Gordon, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm coming to the end of a stay out in Spain, so at least I've had some good weather for the last couple of months. So hopefully coming back to a nice summer in Britain, and already looking forward to the start of next season.
I am too, Gordon. Mr. Danello, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, guy. Lovely to do a show with these chaps. I can't remember, like I said, the last time we did this is certainly before Christmas, wasn't it? It was well before Christmas. It wasn't even a half season review, but yeah, always a pleasure to do it with these guys. And yeah, it's like we're talking about the end of last season. The fixtures are out, I think it's next Wednesday. So it's everyone's looking forward to when Fulham are announcing their tours to Spain. I think they're going to Portugal for a mid pre-season tour. So yeah, and we're all looking forward, and the fixtures are being released for next season, so we can start to book our holidays for next year as well. So yeah, looking forward to it. It should be a good show.
So am I. I always enjoy doing a show with the four of us together. It's always a lot of fun. Gordon, as I always say, it's one of the things that I really enjoy is you talking to Emilio. I don't know why, but it really brings me joy.
The thing is, I think Emilio's changed over the last couple of years.
You think so?
Whether it's because I'm having a go at his positivity or negativity, but he seems to be a much happier person within himself now.
Okay, well that's good. All right, guys.
20 hours time, Gordon. See what you think then.
Okay, well, again, this should be a lot of fun. I really look forward to doing shows like this, and Emilio, I'm going to go to you first, and then I'll go to our Fulham legends, okay? Just give me your opening thoughts on the season that happened. I've called it the box of chocolate season because you didn't know what you were going to get. They end up 11th. I'm happy with some of it. I'm disappointed in others. 11th, I predicted 7th, so I got that wrong. What are your thoughts?
Look, it's been a good season, right? Look at our points tally, 50 odd, mid 54, 55 points. That's not to be sniffed at. That's a record number of points in the Premier League. So we've got to be proud of that achievement. But you're right, Russ. I think there's just that inconsistency at times. You know, that's the thing that's preventing this team pushing up another 10 points up the table. I think overall we should be pleased. It's progress each season. Non-fans will see it. Well, actually, we finished mid-table last year and the year before. It's mid-table again. Yep, the table doesn't lie. But we're getting, again, closer to those top teams. We're able to compete against those top 6, top 8 teams. We tend to beat them, or at least give them a good run for their money. But we've got this dilemma. We just can't seem to beat these bogey teams, the teams in the bottom 3, bottom 6, where we do tend to struggle. And teams that press us and sometimes they defend in numbers, like Southampton earlier in the season. So I think it's been an overall good season. It's progress. But again, I think it's also a missed opportunity. We had the chance to push up the table further. We dropped too many points from winning positions. And where you saw the likes of Man United, Tottenham, and other teams struggling compared to previous years, this was a chance for us to push up and maybe hit those dizzy heights of 6, 7, 8. But you know, we dropped too many points, and ultimately we finished, I think, where we deserve to be, a mid-table. We are a mid-table team. Let's not kid ourselves. We are a mid-table team. But there was a missed opportunity because of the lack of consistency. But overall, comfortable in the Premier League. We've got a good manager. Just a few refinements required around the edges just to strengthen the team. And you saw the lack of depth in the team was noticeable when we had started to pick up a few injuries either side of Christmas and the New Year. Those injuries hurt us. And I think that also restricted us, maybe pushing up another 6 to 10 points. But overall, for the amount of money we've spent and for the investment and for the competitiveness of this league, we should be proud that we're the 10th, 11th best team in the country. That's not to be sniffed now. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Okay, very good. Interesting way to look at it, Emilio. And I look at it, like I said, I'm a little bit disappointed, but there's some incredible moments during that season. And Rob, you got a chance to see, I want to say, the good and the bad. So what are your thoughts overall on the season? And we're going to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, a bit like Emilio says there, I was pleased. I mean, I saw nearly every away game bar one, Ipswich away. I only saw 4 live games at home, but watched many others as I did. Yeah, frustrating towards that last 11 games. Losing 9 out the last 11 was a major disappointment. I'm not only for us fans watching, I'm sure it was for Marco and his staff, because we'd got ourselves in a really good position going into that last quarter of the season, and then we just fell away from it. And I think me and Emilio were talking yesterday. I mean, to lose 28 points when we scored first, it's a stat that, I'm sure Marco was analysing throughout the season. Every time it was 3 points, then 6, then 9. You can't be doing that in this division. Otherwise, that's why you won't get to 6 or 7. But it's been enjoyable most of the season to watch us playing on the front foot. Yes, it could have been a lot better. As we said, we could have been 10, 12, 15 points better off. We could have probably nicked to 6th or 7th. We could have done a bit of a Forest. Probably didn't have the squad in depth to really challenge for the whole season, even though we didn't have, many injuries. We probably conceded too many goals. We missed, I think we did miss Polinia there in the middle of the park there, stopping that as well as Sander did and Lukic did, probably up until the beginning of this year. We still miss that pivotal holding midfield player that stops them balls getting into strikers. And we did concede some silly goals, and we probably give away too many goals. But overall, yeah, it was a joy to watch. Some nice football, some nice goals, some nice games. But, as Emilio said there, we should be pleased that the progression we've made each season under Marco.
We have, Rob, and before I go to Gordon, it's funny because I've already done a review show, and one of my co-hosts said that we've now been in the Premier League backup for 3 seasons, and the transition should be done at this point. Now we should be building. Do you agree with that? That now we have been there long enough that we should now find a way to get into Europe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Marco is of the same opinion. I don't think really he had the first 2 seasons the full say on transfers and what people he wanted in. I think he had more of a say last season, saying that he stuck his neck on Smith Rowe, which, if I were honest, I don't think's worked. I think he's been a big disappointment for us this season. It's tough for him, but he's not been consistent enough. So he's in charge of probably the market and the transfer market, which didn't seem, that was happening the first 2 seasons he was here. And I think he voiced his opinion on that. And obviously was the rumor where he might have gone last season to Saudi. But yeah, I'm hoping whether he has the money again this summer to try and strengthen the side. We don't know, in terms of what he's going to get allocated. But, we're in a position now where we should be pushing forward as a Brentford or a Bournemouth or so.
No, I totally agree with that. Over to you, Gordon. I just want to get your opening thoughts on the season that happened. Like I said, we've had some great moments. You got to see Liverpool beaten at home, which was fantastic, and some really great victories overall. What are your thoughts on the season?
Yeah, I think although the 2 guys have covered most of the main points, it's a season that could have been so much better. And I think at the end of the season, you're left feeling a bit disappointed, a bit depressed, because even with 6 games to go, and I know looking at the fixtures, we didn't have a great run in at the end of the season, but even with 6 games to go, you're still in with a chance of getting a European spot. And as Rob said, it just sort of fizzled out. And I know, having spoken to some of the players in hospitality, they were all looking at a European spot. So it was something that both Marco and the players had in their minds. But as both of the lads have said, we just lost too many games, or we lost points in games when we should have For instance, Man City away, Traore has 3 opportunities. At least if he puts one away, we could win the game. Liverpool away, we're winning 2-1. Liverpool down to 10 men. So Emilio said we can now fight and get results against the big 6.
Right.
But it's just disappointing at the end of the day to say that we've got the record point score for the club in the Premier League, but we've come away in the bottom half of the table, which never looked on. And when you look at some of the teams around us, I think Everton were fighting off relegation. I think they were only 4 points behind us at the end of the season. So it's a good season in one respect, but it's a disappointing end of the season in another. But we've got to sort of look forward. We're still in the Premier League. We could have finished in the top 6, top 8. So things are going in the right direction. It's going to be interesting now to see what happens in the transfer window, who goes and who comes in. So that's going to be something that the club are going to be working hard on. But it's just going to be interesting from a fan's point of view to see who, I won't say who we're linked with, because we will be linked with probably about 20 players between now and the end of the window.
More than that, Gordon. More than that.
Yeah. And it's always Crystal Palace, West Ham, and Fulham are interested in this player. So don't believe what you read in the papers or see on YouTube. Just wait until we get the signatures done, and then the club announces it. But I'm looking forward to that anyway. But yeah, a lot of good things to take out of the season. But as the boys have said, we gifted too many silly goals away, which cost us at the end of the day.
Okay, and that's a great segue. Before we really go into reviewing, I'm going to go right back to you, Gordon, because I've talked about this on Cottage Talk many times, that Fulham faded near the end of the season. I would say the second half of the season. Gifting goals, I think, is where we begin. Where else would be where you would go with why Fulham faded?
I've spoken in the last month or 6 weeks of the season. I spoke to Raul Jimenez and Muniz, but Muniz was only a couple of minute chat when he was brought across to just have some photographs taken. And I said to both of them that if I was in their position, I would be pulling my hair out, because I just think we don't get the ball into the danger area enough. When we have chances to cross the ball, we want to score the perfect goal that either Ronaldo or Messi or Zlatan Ibrahimovic would score in the day. Pass, get through people, slide it around the keeper, great goal. And sometimes you've just got to put the ball in the danger area, get on the end of it. And if it's not coming in, and I've said this to the 2 strikers, you should be pointing at them and making everybody in the ground know that you want the ball put in when they've got the chance. Because I think we just turn down opportunities to put the ball into a danger area. And if we put it in there enough, even international players make mistakes. So we've got to get the chance. If you look, Raul scored 12 goals. I think Muniz ended up with 8. After that, quite a few players on 6. So we still need to score more goals when we're attacking and when we're on the front foot, especially at home. But we've got the pace in the team to catch teams on the counter-attack away from the Cottage. But at home, I just don't think we give the forwards enough to go to chase into that danger area to score enough goals to win games sometimes.
Okay, very good. Rob, over to you. I want to get your thoughts on why Fulham faded, and feel free to share your thoughts on what Gordon just said.
Yeah, I mean, I think our home form was poor most of the season. I mean, you look at a lot of results where we weren't even competitive in some games. Our home form, away from home, we seemed to play a different game. We went after teams, but at home, even against mid-table and the bottom teams, we struggled. You know what I mean? And the most disappointing side of it was the Crystal Palace semi-final. and the Crystal Palace League game 2 weeks before that. You know what I mean? And they just come and done a job, as did a few other teams throughout the season. So the home form was key, and I think Marco probably, needs to be aware. I'm sure he is that when teams come and either play a different system that he's not used to, we need to break teams down better and quicker, like we do away from them when we're on the front foot from the kickoff more times than not. So yeah, I mean, lack of form, the back end of the season from Christmas onwards, some players struggled defensively. I thought Anderson, I don't think cut the mustard for the full season. I don't think he was as good as a signing as we all thought was going to be. That's my own personal opinion. I thought Bassi was consistent throughout the season, but I just think Anderson, because he likes to play in a 3 centre halves, probably more than a 2. So I think I think he needs to step up again this coming season. But the bottom line is, as we alluded to just earlier on, I think we missed that holding midfield player. As much as I think Sander Berg was probably one of our best players throughout the season, inserted, but I just think he's not that type of player. He's similar, but he's not that type of player that Pellegrini just really used to block and stifle them gaps. And Lukic is busy, and he flies around like sometimes gets involved, but I just don't think his system, the way we play, is not disciplined enough to try and secure them 2 centre halves, and teams were playing through us through the lines. So I mean, we didn't score enough goals, as Gordon said, and we conceded way too many. And I think it was our home form that let us down throughout the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Rob, I'm going to get into this more with you once we talk about the midfield. But I'm going to make the argument. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I think the loss of Paulinho was more than I really gave it credit, because of the fact that we had to have 2 players take the place of one. I think hurt not just defensively, but the creativity going forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And me and Amelia were talking off air yesterday, just in a phone call, that I think them 2, they tried to do that one job, and Lukic probably sort of lost his way a little bit after Christmas when he got injured. Sanders obviously done a steady job in there, but to say we lacked that. Pereira then didn't, we didn't have that sort of that tenacity that Pellegrini gives you and wins balls and then starts to keep it simple. But then we weren't quick on the break for the likes of Pereira or Kearney or Smith Rowe or Alex, So I think you're right in what you're saying, that them 2 probably just needed to do one man's job.
Right. I totally agree with that. Over to you, Emilio. I want to get your thoughts on why you think we faded. I think defensively, I've talked about with this with Tony Gold. He talks about the lack of clean sheets, so you look at there. But I'm glad that we're talking with our Fulham legends here, because they're bringing up some other good points.
Yeah, it's without really, echoing what the guys already said, but this is 4 seasons now. It's not even this season. We've faded for 4 consecutive seasons under Marco Silva. Let's reflect not just the championship season. I was disappointed. You remember that we won the title with only 90 points. We should have been well in excess of 100 points with that squad and with the manner. We're winning 6-2, 6-2, and losing 3-0, 3-1. It goes back to that consistency. And Marco's, clearly doesn't like to work with big squads. My understanding was he didn't want new additions to the squad in January in the transfer window. So he wanted to work on a small, tight-knit team. And the risks of that is injuries. I think Reece Nelson's injury before Christmas, I think we shouldn't forget about that. I actually thought we were lively, at times unpredictable, but he gave us pace, width, good balls in the box. His finishing will always improve. But I liked Reece Nelson, what he brought to this team, but he got injured out of the season. The team was a little bit predictable at times, plays out of position. Pereira is not a central midfielder. Playing out of position, then fans criticize him for being ineffective. Actually, he's being played out of position either because of lack of depth in the squad. There's many fundamental factors here as far as I'm concerned, but let's be very clear. It's 4 seasons in a row that we've faded. So this season is no difference. For me, it's about lack of depth.
Okay.
we're playing. Players are playing beyond their means at times. Let's be frank as well. He's maximizing what he can get out of these players, and there's only so much you can keep pushing these players. And when you've got injuries to contend with as well, at times he's got a thankless task, Paul Marco Silva. So he's limited what he can do with a thinly stretched squad, and games coming in thick and fast. But the positives are that I think we're saying that we're more competitive against the top 6 teams. We should have got potentially into a cup quarter semi-final, potentially into a final. So we're making progress on 1-to-1 head-to-head matches. But over 38 games in the season, we do tend to struggle the last 10 to 12 games of each of these seasons. And it's a common theme. It's not just this season. It's been every season so far.
I agree with that. Gordon, I want to go back over to you because I was thinking about this as well. And we'll talk about this when we talk about the strikers, because I want to talk about Rodrigo Muniz. I actually think his loss at the end of the season was hurtful, was more hurtful. Again, I'm talking about the situation with Paulina. I think the loss of Muniz, I could also talk about Reece Nelson as well as a winger, but I think Muniz was just coming into his own. And then I think his loss hurt the team.
I think so, because you've got to have somebody there pushing Raul, who I think is obviously the main choice for, if you class it as the number 9. And Muniz is very much a confidence player. I still, even after the time that he's been with us, I still don't think he's the finished article, because to me, I still think we can get more out of him. He's slightly changed his game now. He has started, as I said, probably last season. He was always trying to outmuscle the centre halves, and it's not his game. And I wanted to see him come short, spin, and go in behind. And he started sort of doing that. And players would then play a ball over the top for him to run onto. And when he's on his streak, then he's looking to get into, as I mentioned earlier, that danger area every time. So when you've then only got Raul, who knows that he's going to be playing, but probably is going to come off after 60, 70 minutes for someone else. And at the moment it was Vinicius. And I've said probably for 18 months that we needed to get rid of him as quickly as possible. Because I don't think he's up to never mind our team, he's not up to the Premier League.
Right.
But I think we missed Rodrigo and his infectious smile on the pitch, because it seems as though the players really love playing with him and like him in the team. And he's a happy character, which is great. Yeah. But it just hurts us. And I know that Emilio mentioned injuries. And I think injuries did play a big part, because he mentioned Reece Nelson. Right. When he was brought on for the first 20 minutes as a substitute in his first appearance for us, for those 20 minutes he was unplayable. And then it's a bit like Harry Wilson. It's like chicken and the egg. You bring them on for 20 minutes to go, and they terrorise defences. You start them from the game for 90 minutes, and they just keep in the ball and playing it back. Mm. So injuries did play a part, but I'll certainly go along with you with regards to Paulinho, because I think Berg will fill that mantle. But I think this season he's trying to get to know the players around him, the system. Right. Because you just look at the goals that Paulinho scored for us.
I know.
I don't think Lukic and Berg, if I'm correct, I don't think they've scored a goal for us this season.
Not at all.
We're certainly lacking goals from set pieces, as well as from the middle of the park, because Pereira is another one who I think is playing well below the performances he puts in for his country. So it's Muniz was a big loss at the time, because if he comes in and he starts scoring goals, then it puts Raul on the defensive as well. Then because he knows if he's first choice, he's got to get on the score sheet. So I think they've got to be pushing each other, not having just one centre forward there. And he knows I'm going to be playing next week, whatever happens.
totally agree. I think when that happened, I think it affected Raul. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think they fed off of each other, Gordon. That's a great point. Okay, let's move on. Emilio, I'm going to go to you. Let's talk a little bit about the defense, and then I'll go to our Fulham legends to break down where they played, and they could talk a little bit more about Fulham's midfield, and then, of course, Gordon can talk about up front. So give me your thoughts on the defense. So what's interesting here, like I talked to Tony so many times, and he talked about lack of clean sheets, and I agree with all that. I think that's a factor here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put your finger on why this defense was not at the level that maybe it could have been? Is it lack of continuity? The players as individuals are good defenders? Was there a weak link? Because I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to talk about player of the season, and Bernd Leno is going to be my choice for player of the season. I'll mention that now. But I want to get your thoughts on the defense in general and what went right and what went wrong.
Yeah, obviously, I think we've talked about the missing Paulinho. I think that's quite clear. I always compare this Fulham team to Nottingham Forest. What's the one difference really between those two teams? I think it's the fact that Forest kept a lot of clean sheets up until February, March time. They faded away as well. They'll be disappointed they didn't get into a Champions League position, but they kept those clean sheets when it counted, and we just continued to keep conceding. How many clean sheets did we have all season? I think only 3 or 4. Big factors because we didn't have Paulinho, and we've discussed that.
Yep.
You look at Kenny Tete, when Kenny was in the side before Christmas.
Yep.
He was pushing forward defensively, more of a rock, stronger, making those darting runs. Castagne's a different type of fullback, a little bit steady Eddie, plays the simple things, not as strong, doesn't venture forward as much. And it turns out he was carrying a knock as well for the best part of 3 months as well. So he was playing, for 2 or 3 months with an injury. You look on the other side of the phone, to your point about why did we fade? How many assists did Jedi get in the last 3 months compared to the previous 4 or 5? Not many, because he wasn't playing at his full potential, and he was also carrying a knock for the best part of 3 or 4 months. So you've got sort of Kenny injured for 4 months, Jedi not playing to his full potential for the last 3 months of the season. And then you've got your central defence. We all thought Anderson will be an upgrade for Tosin. Everyone wanted Tosin to go. Did we upgrade? Rob, you made a point. We spent 28 million on Anderson. I remember having a conversation with you guys at the beginning of the season. Anderson potentially would have been our future captain. He's had a very, very poor season. He's slow, sluggish. He started off well, but he got a sending off. Did he get a sending off against Villa, I think it was?
He did.
Then got injured against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He came back around Christmas time. Not the same player. Slow, sluggish. His passing wasn't as crisp as it has been, as long balls he used to play, not as effective. So clearly, I still think he was carrying knock the second half of the season. He never fully recovered from that injury around November time. And Bassi, has probably been our most consistent defender throughout the season, and he will get better and better and better. But Diop, no disrespect, I thought Diop did very, very well when he covered for Anderson in the month of December. I agree. He went unbeaten in the month of December. Diop made one mistake against Bournemouth. He was vilified. He went all the tweets went viral because of Diop's one mistake. Anderson and even Bassi has made countless errors. Where's the criticism for those two players? I thought Diop got hard done by. He deserved to continue to be in that starting lineup. Marco tried to play a back 5, tried to change the system, tinkered a little bit. It didn't work. Who got compromised? Diop back on the bench. Anderson straight back into your starting back 4. So overall, I don't think we've upgraded the defence. No, I don't think it was no different to the previous season. The key factor is we've kept less clean sheets because of Paulinho not being there, the heart of that central midfield. And Bernd Leno, steady. He was my player of the season, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, he made a few errors. And my worry about Bernd Leno is how many goals have the opposition scored from long distance? If we actually analyse opposing teams are shooting from distance, from outside a box. Sometimes Bernd gets caught out. But I love Bernd, best signing ever. But, value for money, return on investment, fantastic. But that back 4 has not been an upgrade from the previous season when we had Tosin in place of Anderson. So it's no upgrade, no change. The consistent factor here is injuries to the fullbacks, and we're missing Paulinho in that protecting that back 4. Basically, that's what's those key factors.
Okay, very good. All right, Rob, I'm going to go to you. I want to talk about the midfield. I'll go to Gordon. We'll talk about. I'll let him talk about the wingers and the strikers up front. But I just want you to give your thoughts on central midfield, because we talked about this when we did a show earlier in the season, and I want to get your thoughts on Berg and Lukic. You already talked about the miss of Paulinho, and I think it's playing out, and I think now we can look back and say, yes, they missed him. And I think Emilio brought up a good point that it probably affected the defense. But I do want to focus on Pereira and especially Smith Rowe, because Smith Rowe is someone that I still believe in, Rob. I believe he needs a good second season to really evaluate who he is. But I want to start with him. I want to get your thoughts on Smith Rowe and why it was not the season that maybe we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it came with a big transfer fee, 34 million round his head. You know, he joined us late into pre-season. He hadn't had a full pre-season himself. You know, he was a bit injury prone at Arsenal for the previous 2 or 3 years, never really sort of broke into their squad and played regular. So he came with the big price tag. And I think, you know, after a few weeks, he's got that sort of Teddy Sheringham type body language, sort of the way he sort of parades around the pitch. And if you're that type of player, you've got to be putting a shift in. And Marco, for sure, I'm sure he had him in a few times, even after the first few weeks. And his work ethic weren't as sharp as it would be that Marco demands from the players, because I know that for a fact. So playing a 10, which he was, it took him. And if you looked at the first probably 8 or 10 games, he was either starting and coming off of after 60, or a few games then he wouldn't even put him on. He'd put him on for the last 30. So he probably took 3 or 4 months to get. I mean, it weren't even until November. Yeah, he scored the odd goal, or he made a few assists here and there. But for a player that came with the big price tag, I think we all expected him to hit the ground running, which obviously didn't happen. And I felt sorry for him sometimes, because, like you said, I think probably within there is a player.
Absolutely, I believe it.
I just don't know how we're gonna. Hopefully, now he's had a nice summer, go away, settle out, come back into pre-season, have a full 4 or 5 weeks with the lads, and then hit the ground running at the beginning of the season. We're hoping that we see a better player this time round, and I'm sure there is within there, because technically he's got some lovely attributes. You know, he is that type of player that can look good on the eye, but can then, from a defensive point of view, when you haven't got the ball, as a manager or as a supporter or a coach, he may not be doing the things that you're expecting him to do. And sometimes his body language and his aura about him gives away that he's not really pushing enough, you know. Okay. So I'm sure that's not the case. I wouldn't like to think that, but you know, 9 times out of 10, if Marco's going to make a substitution, it would have been him if he'd have started, you know, whether we were winning, losing, or trying to get back in game. So, yeah, I'm hoping he goes away this summer, has a really good rest, comes back, has a really good pre-season, and, you know, he gels in with all the lads. You know, he knows a number of them from his Arsenal days. I definitely think there's a player there. I just think we've got to unlock it somehow. And I think fitness would be the key to getting a really good pre-season out of him and trying to get him up to the level that Marco and his staff expects from that type of player, whether you're a 10, 8 or 6, which is not, he's a 10, but
he's a 10.
You draft in and out. He can be an 8 or a 10.
Okay. So that's going to lead me to ask you about Pereira, who I've talked a lot about on Cottage Talk. One of the criticisms from my co-host, Tony, has been the lack of goals from Pereira. He did score that great goal against Man City. We could talk about that. But at first, he started as basically a number 8, but then he at times was the number 10 in place of Smith Rowe. What did you make of his season?
Yeah. Again, some games he's been absolutely brilliant for us. Not this season, previous seasons gone by. You know, he's been our best assist and he scored good goals. Technically very good, typical Brazilian. Great on the eye, you know, when you're playing well. To be fair to him, he does work hard off the ball. I mean, Marco's changed his game. He does make him work harder than he did do probably 3 seasons ago. But I think, again, I feel slightly a little bit sorry for him because he's not playing in his correct position. he is a 10. You've got to play him as a 10. He can't play as an 8. Problem is, we've got Emil as a 10. He can't play. You might play him as an 8. Just let him drift back to a little bit deeper, like Teddy used to do back in the day, and just Harry Kane's been doing for the last sort of 2 years. Just drift back in and try and start attacks from a deeper position. But yeah, I don't think Pereira, the rumours of last summer him meant to be moving. So he started the season under a bit of a cloud, thinking, did he say what he said? Supporters were saying that he wanted to, he looked like he wanted to move away through the language or the miscommunication of language on going where he wanted to go back to Brazil. But again, he's one I would give another. I'd give him another season this year.
Okay.
I'm hoping he won't go this summer again. The rumours may be rife again, but I'd like him to stay but play. It's going to be difficult for Marco because they're both technically probably both 10s. But I think I think one of them could play. I think I could see Smith Rowe as an 8 rather than a 10.
Oh,
I think he could play a little bit deeper and just slide balls through and let Andreas play as a 10 and link up with Muniz or Raul or whatever. So yeah, they're two. Obviously behind them we
Bergen Lukic.
Yeah, Lukic. In theory, Sander's been our best midfield player, I think, for most of the season, and he's a defensive type one. He's very, very basic in terms of his passes are sideways or backwards. He just keeps it ticking, but he does break up. He's not been a Polini, and we've alluded it to earlier.
Yeah,
them two have had to do one man's job, which has really affected the team, I think, in terms of our presence going forward as well.
I totally agree with that. Rob, before we move on, and I'm glad that we talked about the difference between having two players doing one and talking about Emil Smith Rowe, and then of course we talked about Pereira. I do want to mention before we're going to end by talking about Josh King. I want to get your thoughts on Tom Kearney and his situation. It's funny because Kearney still has an impact all the way to the end of the season, and we don't know what his future lies. What are your thoughts about Tom?
Yeah, again, it's been a difficult season for him personally. He's come on when we've needed either to win games or see games out, and he's good what he is. His ball retention is probably the best by any of our midfield players by far, because he can either keep the ball if we're trying to see a game out, or he probes. You look at some of the games when he came on at 60, 65 and tried, some of his passes is quite, as much as he goes sideways and backwards, he's always probing, and he always has a good influence down the left-hand side with it, whether it be Jedi or William or Alex. He seems to probe on that left side. Obviously, he would like to play more, I'm sure, but he's been a squad player now for probably two seasons, and he's probably, ended up playing 10, 12, 15, 18 games from the bench. So, disappointing that the club didn't make an announcement before the end of the season to say whether he was staying or going. We don't know as of today. We're seeing in the newspapers that he's been offered a contract. I'm not 100% certain that's true or not. The same with Kenny. The club have been negative in terms of the sort of communication about stuff like this. I think it should have been, all that sort of thing should have been sorted before the end of the season, because if both or one of them decided to leave us and go elsewhere, they've not had an opportunity to say goodbye to the fans, which I think from a club's point of view would be disappointing, because they've both, if they, God forbid, if they both did leave, one's put 5 years in and one's put 10 years in. And, the club should have been a little bit more proactive in either giving them a contract or coming forward and saying, when the season finishes, that, we won't be offering you a contract. So they've come out and said in the press that they are negotiating. So, let's see. It's only 4 weeks off till they're probably back in training again, So I feel sorry for them that they don't know where their careers are going to be going as a family.
I feel bad for them too. And I wish Tom the best. We'll see how it all plays out. I know there's all this talk about Wrexham. And to be honest with you, Rob, as someone that is inundated with Wrexham stuff here in America, I don't want him to go there, but I would understand it. Okay. I would absolutely understand it. I think he would do phenomenal at Wrexham. But at this point, I want him back at Fulham. So, and there is that uncertainty. So I hope that he does. I hope he stays. I hope he stays.
I think he deserves another year.
I agree with that.
And I'm slightly disappointed that, it's 10 years. He's not getting offered a testimonial. You know what I mean?
Should.
This day and age, a player to serve that long and don't get offered a testimonial is beyond me.
I agree. Real quick, I wanted to ask you before I go to Gordon and get his thoughts about the players up front and the wingers. I want to ask you about Josh King. I'm fascinated by this because here you got this young player with all kinds of talent, Rob. He can play the number 10 as well. What I've noticed from him, and I want to get your thoughts on this because we're talking about Emil Smith-Rowe. We're talking about Pereira, right? The one thing that I've noticed from him is that he can create on his own. The others, I think, need service. They need the ball to him. This kid, I think, can do it on his own. What are your thoughts about his future?
Yeah, I like him, and by talking to people at the club, I mean, they've got big plaudits for him. I think he's better than what Carvalho was at his age.
I agree with that.
I think he's better than Harvey when Harvey left us at 16. I know that Josh has been training with the first team for near on 2 years now, and the games that he's played or come on, like you say, he's got that lovely aura about him, a nice spark. He's quick. He's on the half turn. Like you say, we're probably inundated with trying to work out who's going to play 10, and the kid obviously needs games. Hopefully the club are looking after him, making sure we tie him down to contract. We've seen in the last few days another youngster in the reserves. Osman might be on his way to Celtic. Which again is disappointing when he's come through the academy and they get that they want to be assured that they're going to get some kind of pathway through to get to the first team. And he's obviously made a decision, like Harvey did many years ago, to think that I'm not going to sign a professional contract. I want to go elsewhere to try and break into a team earlier than I can see fit here at the moment.
Okay, very good. All right. I'm going to now go over to you, Gordon. I definitely want to get your thoughts on the strikers up front. Actually, before we go and talk about the strikers and the wingers, I think I want to ask your thoughts on a young player like Callum Osman, because it looks like he is now moving on. You were a striker. What are your thoughts on his situation? Because he's been at Fulham for a while, but he wants to play, and Celtic are probably going to give him that chance.
I think he probably finds himself in exactly the same situation as Jay Stansfield did a few seasons ago.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I've always said about our academy, we've got a very good reputation within the game for producing young players. But you mentioned that they've got to see some pathway through to the first team, and it's great for the youngsters to be put on the bench when there's basically another whole team on the bench these days, rather than when Rob and myself played sort of one substitute. So if you've got the one substitute and somebody gets injured, the kid's got a chance of playing. But the way things are going in the professional sport, unless you are pulling up trees literally in training and week in, week out when you're playing for whichever team in the academy, you don't seem to get many minutes at Fulham. And I think I was taking Jay Stansfield around hospitality the season before he left.
Yeah.
And I was telling everybody how much I thought and I used the phrase the kid, because he was still a kid to me, being 18, 19 years of age. And I said, if he spends the whole of his career at Fulham, he'll be the first Fulham player to score over 200 goals. And I think even he was surprised that I'd said that. And I told him, I've got all faith in you to, after you go out on loan, to come back and start scoring goals for Fulham. So to see this now happening, and Rob mentioned a few players that have left, to see this happening with other players coming through the academy, especially when we are looking for people to score goals. It's the hardest thing to do in the game. It always has been. And if you've got somebody that can put the ball in the back of the net, why not give them 4 or 5 games? Give them the chance. Put them in the squad when Muniz is injured.
Yeah.
You don't have to put him up front and just say, right, you're the main man up there. You've got to hold the ball up. You've got to play to the kids' strengths. And if it means slightly changing a formation, then change the formation. And as happened when we played, sometimes you put somebody in out of the blue when a player gets injured. And the prime example is Dean Coney. Malcolm just threw him in the team from the reserves. We had an instant link and we started playing well together. Now, if that happens with Raul and a player from the academy, then it gives Marco Silva a nice problem to think, do I change the formation of the team because we've now got 2 players playing up front who can score goals, right. Or do I just keep bringing him on for 20 minutes every now and again? Right. But at least then the kid can see some way of getting first team football, right, and playing a game that he loves. But at the moment, it looks like we're going to lose another possible star from the academy, going right out the door before he's even put a pair of boots on for the first team.
Very frustrating, Gordon, because I'm still upset about the Jay Stansfield situation, okay? I'm very upset by that because for you to talk about him in such glowing terms like this, you could see it. And the fact that they let this player, I'm talking about Stansfield, go to Birmingham City because they were going all in to get back to the championship. And I get that. I think it was a mistake, Gordon. And I'll say it right now. I would have liked to have seen Gordon. I would have liked to have seen Jay Stansfield throughout the season. He would have helped Fulham last season. I'm going to say it right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you've got to give these players a chance. And you can't just keep putting them on for 10 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes at the end of the game. Yep. Sometimes you've got to put them in the team for 4 or 5 games and see how they do. But managers will turn around and say, in those 5 games, if we don't score a goal and we don't win, I could lose my job. And that's the way that it's gone. I think the managers now are sometimes frightened to put youngsters in. And I use the phrase, unless they're pulling up trees during training. We go back to some of the players that we've had, and you look at the one that's made it, Cess, and then we sell him. He goes through injuries. He doesn't really fit into the whatever at Tottenham, and he comes back and he starts playing for us again. Yep. And he left us as a boy, and he came back a man, both in mentally and physically. And what he's done since he's come back, I think he now feels he's back home, and he's going to start next season pushing for a place either wide left, or he's going to be pushing Robbo. Say you have a few bad games, I'm going to take your spot at left back. So it can happen, but you've got to give him a chance.
I totally agree, Gordon. It's funny. I was just about to ask you about Ryan Sessegnon. You stole my thunder there, because I was going to ask you about him, because I think he is the unsung hero of the season. I think bringing him back, as Tony Gold said on a prior show, the signing of the season on a free might be Ryan Sessegnon. But again, we're kind of running short for time, so I'm going to forget a little bit about the wingers just because we're short of time. I'd like to get your thoughts on Iwobi and Traore, but I want to focus one more time on Raul and Muniz, and just share me your thoughts on them. The one thing I want to ask you, do you think they got the proper service this season?
I don't think so, because when, as I said a bit earlier, when I interviewed Raul, and I said, you probably get 3, maybe 4 half chances in an entire 90 minutes. I would want, if I was in your position, to be getting in that area to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 chances. I said, but that only comes to when someone puts the ball in the box to give you that opportunity. And part of his answer was, well, sometimes I make a near post run and it goes to the far post. So I've made a bad run. And I immediately stopped him. I said, no, you haven't made a bad run. I said, you've made a run to the near post. If it goes to the far post, that's not your job. Then you can't be in 2 places. That's down for the left-sided midfield player or right-sided midfield player, or even an attacking midfield player, like when I played with Rob. If I went near post, Dean might go far post. Rob was coming in on the penalty spot. So you always generally had 3 players attacking crosses. When sometimes crosses come in, we've got Raul in there by himself. And you go back a few years, I was saying exactly the same thing about Mitro, and he was being marked by 2 centre halves. Raul's finding that a similar problem because our wide players just don't get the ball in there enough. So I think they're frustrating, and I think sometimes they don't make it known. As I said earlier, they don't make it known that they've made a run and we've taken another 10 passes to go from the right, cross midfield, back to the left-hand side, and then we might get a cross in. But the amount of times that we, if somebody is in the corner and instead of, in my opinion, rolling it slowly back to the fullback, so he knocks it in first time. As a forward, you can then time your run, and whether you go near post, somebody else goes far post. But they knock it back. They've got to take a touch, so the chance is gone, and then we go across the park, and the same thing happens on the other side. So it's obviously the way that Marco wants them to play, but I would be pulling my hair out. And there's not much of it left these days, but I would be pulling everything out. But I would make it known, as I said to Raul and Muniz, make it known to the supporters that you've made the run and someone hasn't put the ball in. So at least the supporters can have a go at the wide players or the fullbacks when they jog in back in to position, and they'll start shouting, "Get the ball in the box." If they start getting in the box, then you've got a chance of scoring goals. But we want to score a perfect goal all the time, I think.
Yeah. And that also, how many, the other statistic as well, I'd like to see someone produce is opposing goalkeepers. How many opposing goalkeepers have won man of the matches against us? Not many.
That's a great one.
Because we're not testing the goalkeeper enough. How many games have we gone where we're battering one team one week and the next week we don't get any shots on target? So it's the unpredictability, the inconsistency. But
Emilio, you mentioned one thing earlier on with regards to people shooting outside the box against Leno. The amount of times that we turn down a shooting opportunity outside the box is frightening because we want to get it wide and we want to put a ball back in the box from there. So it's frustrating at times, and I know the game has changed, but you had somebody like Rob, and I've mentioned this before many a times. I may have seen 200 or 300 different photographs of when I scored a goal from different angles, and I can tell you this: Rob has got to be in, out of the 200 photographs, Rob has got to be in about 180 of them, because he was always in and around the penalty area when I scored, and literally he was probably the first one that got to me when they were still clicking the cameras. So as I say, I've said it before, we used to call, in my mind, they used to call him Detective because he was always first on the scene.
I love that. I love the two of you together. That's great. All right. Great stuff from all three of you. But we do have to wrap up the show soon. So coming up next, we are going to end the show with talking about match of the season and player of the season. Okay, guys, let's now finish up the show. I'm going to ask you to do both at the same time. Match of the season and player of the season. Emilio, I'll go to you first. Give me your match of the season and then follow that up with your player of the season.
Yeah, different ways to look at it. There's so many highs, Brentford at home, Chelsea away, battering Newcastle at home. For me, I think it's a Liverpool game in terms of quality. I thought the Liverpool game at home for me was match of the season, just because, sorry, Chris, I know you're watching and listening tonight. But we battered them in the first half. We battered them. And why couldn't we play that on that front foot more frequently? It's only the last 10, 12 games. For me, that was the most complete performance. But then the emotions of Chelsea away and Brentford at home, coming from behind in both those games, sort of up there as well, just from the emotional side. But from a quality perspective, for me, I think it's Liverpool at home.
Liverpool at home. Okay, so then let's move on to player of the season. I've already said it's Leno for me, Emilio. Is it Leno for you?
Not Leno. I gave him number 3. I gave him put in third I give it to Jedi this season. I think all those assists, up to February time, he was outstanding. All these other clubs in the Premier League and Europe were touting after him, but we only found out later that he was carrying a knot for the best part of 3 or 4 months. But for me, Jedi comes first, Bassi second, and I gave Leno third.
Okay. By the way, Chris is not happy with you. That was a good call
Chris.
there. Okay. Rob, over to you. Let's start with match of the season, and then we'll follow that up with player of the season. What was your match of the season?
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to say the same as Emilio. I think Liverpool at home was just a true, to play as well as we did against the potential champions, which they were, and to really and we didn't have really many good games at home this season. So for a Fulham fan to see us turn over the potential champions and in the manner we did was fantastic. Unfortunately, my wife is a Liverpool fan, so she's probably in the lounge listening. But that was a game which I didn't get to watch live, but obviously we watched it on telly, and I think that was a complete performance. And as I think we've already alluded to, we didn't play that bad against the top 6 this season, whether it be home or away, just the odd occasion, but more so at home. So we can hold our own. It was the mid-table and the bottom teams where we struggled, especially at home.
That's
crazy. that was a fantastic result.
Okay.
And
Rob, I'll give you one that I haven't heard many people talk about, because I think this was a complete performance. Nottingham Forest at home.
Yeah, again, that was against a team that were rigid and a clean sheet kings for most of the season. But let's not take away that Brentford game when Harry scored in 2 late goals. That was,
there you go.
Again, I saw that on television, and the noise coming through the telly was something that it took me back to Juventus at home in 15 years ago. That noise just seemed to generate. It must have been fantastic. Leaving that ground, walking up Fulham Palace Road must have been magical.
Amazing. It was amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Player of the season, Rob.
Again, a difficult one. Jedi was fantastic, as we've said, right up until probably after Christmas. People were saying it was a transfer rumours that his form went off, and we all know, and Emilio has said it. He has been carrying an injury, and I think he shouldn't have played really when he did play.
I agree with that.
Saying that he's probably as quick as anyone when he's half injured than some of them, But I'm actually going to go for Sanderberg. I thought for his first season to play it, asking to be playing in a different role, because let's not forget when he played at Sheffield United or Burnley.
He was at number 8, right?
Yeah, he played. So to be asked to perform a 6, albeit we've said that he's had to do that along Sasa. And again, Lukic the first up until Christmas was pivotal in what them two. But unfortunately, as we've spoke about many times tonight, them two had to take the position of one person, which affected us going forward. But I think for Sander to come into a new team, asked to be played a new role, I think more times than not, he was an 8 out of 10, whether we're winning or losing. He was keeping it simple, ticking along, possibly should get forward a little bit more, because I think he has got goals in him. We've seen in the past in his previous teams. So hopefully, if we do decide to sign a central midfield player, a defensive one, whether Paulinho comes back with the rumours going around, and that releases Sander to go and play. We might end up with too many 8s and too many 10s. Marco might have too many decisions to make.
It's a good problem to have, Rob. Good problem to have.
And from a defensive point of view, I think Bassi got better as the season went on, and I'd put him as runner-up to Sander, definitely.
Okay, excellent. All right, Gordon, let's go to you. Let's start with match of the season.
Match of the season. The lads mentioned the Liverpool game, which is a fantastic game. Obviously, they were already champions by then, so I don't think they were up on form on the day. But the fantastic result of that day was great. But the one that I'm going for, because I actually hated the question of when was the last time we beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge.
There you go.
And of course, that goes back to 1979 when I was playing, and I'm glad that has gone out of the window now.
All right.
And it was nice because I scored a goal in that game, and another Welsh player, Harry Wilson, scored a goal in this game.
That's right.
I'm purely going to get rid of that stat of when was the last, only the 45 years ago, I think. So for me, yeah, Chelsea away, because it's always for me, probably the biggest game of the season when we're playing them across at Stamford Bridge, closely followed by both of the Brentford games.
Yeah,
Rob mentioned the home game. I watched that. I couldn't get to it. I couldn't get out of Valencia Airport because of the floods that we had out here. So I had to watch that on the television, and the noise coming out of the television was absolutely fantastic. And then the late win against them at home, when their first shot of the half, we go in 1-0 down, and to score 2 goals late on. Both those games are very close, but the Chelsea game for me is the match of the season, purely because of the fact that we haven't done it there for such a long period of time.
I certainly understand that, Gordon. All right, let's end with player of the season.
Player of the season, it's strange for me to go for this person, because I'll mention the other 2 that were in my top 3.
Go ahead.
And the other guys have already mentioned, Mbassi and Robinson. But to be perfectly honest with you, yes, he did make 1 or 2 mistakes late on in the season, but I think he saved us so many times this year.
Going with me.
Bernd Leno.
There you go. See, great minds think alike. Unfortunately, Gordon, you and I were both wrong on our predictions the 7th, but you know. No, that's great, Gordon. That's fantastic. I agree with that. I thought that Bernd Leno was a huge difference. I think without him, Fulham are maybe in a relegation battle. That's how much he has saved Fulham. So I definitely understand that.
We could have been below Tottenham and Man United.
Oh, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Okay. All right, guys, this has been just such a joy as always doing it with you. Gordon, thank you so much for doing this. I hope you enjoyed it.
I love when we get together. We do have a laugh. Every now and again, Emilio does say something that is really sensible. So that's great to listen to as well.
You've been a very good influence on him. I want to say that it's
just
because of you.
It's just nice to be back in the studio with the 3 of you. I really enjoy it. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Gordon. I like I said, I've looked forward to this all day. I always enjoy when the 4 of us get together. Rob, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing the show.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, it's been way too long, and I think we should get a date in the diary in sort of 6 weeks' time when the fixtures are out in next week and the lads are back in pre-season. We'll have our start of the season prediction show again, probably in second week, middle of July or something. And we'll all put our heads on the block and see who we've signed, where we're going to finish. Look forward to the many Fulhamish games that we'll probably endure throughout the season. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have some good banter as we've done this evening. It's thoroughly enjoyable to get to hear all the different opinions. And yeah, thanks for the invitation.
You are welcome. Mr. Danello, as always, it's a pleasure. I haven't got a chance to congratulate Napoli. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's proud. What, 2 Scudettos in 3 years? Italian football is struggling a little bit at the moment. I was watching Sander Berg looking like the best central midfielder in the world the other night when Norway battered Italy, and he nearly scored. Look, again, to your point, Gordon, Rob, in Norway he's playing in a much more advanced role, and look, he hit the post again, because he's always looking his eye towards goal, whilst also doing a very tidy job in the midfield. But it's always a pleasure doing the show with the four of us. Like you said, Rob, it's fixtures are out next. I think it's next Wednesday, so
we might have to get together soon.
So we'll do a prediction for next season. There'll be a few more twists and turns, I'm sure, in the transfer window. Players coming, going, but it's going to be an interesting transfer window. I think this is probably a key one. I think we haven't talked about it tonight, but Fulham again is how do we push on every season? We've got further up the table in terms of points. How do we? Like Rob, I think Gordon, you mentioned it. To get the highest points tally and still finish 11th, that's quite gut wrenching. Yeah. Actually, how do we then get even more points on the board next year and finish in a higher position? But yeah, there's got to be some investment in the club. But I said there's going to be a few more twists and turns, but Napoli at least have got something to celebrate anyway this season.
Okay. Can you send Kevin De Bruyne to Fulham instead of Napoli?
No.
Can you do that for us?
He's signing today. I think he's just doing
He
a medical
is.
overnight. So
He is.
and Anguissa, there's still some rumors about him leaving the club as well. But look,
Okay,
he
can he come back to Fulham too? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Look, he left Fulham, wanted to play a bigger, for a bigger club, and he's won 2 Scudettos. Look, he's won 2 Scudettos in 3 years. So
okay,
yeah, but
Gordon, you might have to talk to him, Miller. We gotta get him. We gotta straighten him out. Okay.
But anyway, great show as always. Always good camaraderie and good debate and good discussion. So thank you very much.
Listen, this has been a great show, and as we've talked about, we will be doing this again soon. But I do have to wrap this up. For Gordon Davis and Rob Wilson and Emilio and Russ, thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the Talk Sport Fan Network.